Hi, I think we're here. Since Facebook changed its layout, I had trouble figuring out where the live went. Okay, I think we're live. The timer has not started counting down or up, but it says it's live, so let's talk. Hi! Welcome to What's Up, Marci. This is Marci Brockman, so lovely to see you. It is September 6th at 5:24 in the afternoon Eastern Time. I did think I was going to be here by 5:15 today, but I was doing a very relaxing meditation with Martha Beck on a video. It was really quite lovely. So now we're here. The timer is going. Excellent. So it's Book Talk Sunday. We are now into the month of September. Hard to believe. So this is like the 12th week or so that I've been doing these Book Talk Sundays, and they've become part of my own routine. Let me see if I can move the light so it's less glary on my glasses. So today I would like to talk about a novel that I adore that was published in 2003. I didn't find it until about 2016. I don't know what took me so long. The author is named Jhumpa Lahiri. She's an Indian-born writer. Exquisite prose. The way she describes things and the usage of the words and the way she structures her sentences are phenomenal. I originally found her through her Pulitzer Prize winning collection of stories called The Interpreter of Maladies, and there's a back book ad in my copy of the Namesake for it. It won the Pulitzer. The New Yorker magazine called it the debut of the year. It was absolutely lovely, and then so it put Jhumpa Lahiri on the map for me, and then I found the Namesake somehow, and I loved it so much that I requested that my school district where I teach put it on the curriculum for the 12th grade college English course that I teach. And so for the last couple of years, 3 or 4 years, I've been able to share this phenomenal novel with my high school seniors who are taking my class as freshman comp 1 and 2 for college through CW Post. Anyway, so the novel is, it opens up in 1968, which was the year I was born. And our main character, or so we think is going to be the main character of the whole book, is named Ashima Ganguli. And she's in Boston, and she's pregnant and making a snack for herself in her kitchen. And then we have flashback. This book is artful. Jhumpa Lahiri is artful when it comes to doing flashback, and we see lots of flashbacks through the course of the novel. And so Ashima is standing in her kitchen, and she's making herself a snack that is the best approximation of her favorite snack from India, in Calcutta, where she was from. That's the best approximation that she can make in the United States. And then we take a flashback to her life in Calcutta, where she was a single woman living with her parents as they were trying to arrange a marriage for her. So they would basically invite their friends who had men of marriageable age and, sons, over to the house, and they would all get together, and Ashima would, doll herself up in her pretty sari and do her hair, and then meet these men. And this one particular day, after a bunch of kind of duds that didn't please her, this one particular day, Ashok Ganguli shows up with his family, and he's a graduate student at Harvard or MIT actually, in Boston, or around Boston, Cambridge, and he came back to India to find a wife, and Ashima agrees to marry him. And that's it. Within a week or so, they're married, and she says goodbye to her family, and she flies with him for the very first time on an airplane to Logan Airport in Boston, where they move, where she's just there with her new husband, who she barely knows. And it's really about the life that they build together. And so here we are in 1968, and she's giving birth to their son, who they name Gogol, after Nikolai Gogol, the Russian author. And there's a little backstory with that about a train accident and so on. And the thing that saved Ashok's life was his copy of Nikolai Gogol's short stories with the overcoat in it, and that was his favorite story. And so because Nikolai Gogol's story collection saved his life in this horrific train accident, the only thing he could think to do was to name his son Gogol. And so it was at this point that our main character, our protagonist, becomes Gogol Ganguli, and we see life through his eyes, what it's like to be an American born of immigrant parents. And my guess is that because his parents, although they lived in the United States, they lived in the Boston suburbs and were raising their children in the Boston suburbs, Ashok and Ashima were still of the thought that Calcutta in India was home. And although they were home where they were, living in their house on Pemberton Road in a suburb of Boston, it wasn't quite home for them. So there was this duality of what home is. And they always felt like they were visitors, even though they had a very strong, passionate connection with the other Bengalis, the other Indians who they befriended in America. They were so tightly connected to the customs of their home country that they didn't ever fully embrace American culture. And they would put up a Christmas tree, and they would celebrate Easter and Thanksgiving and Memorial Day and Labor Day and so on. But it was more to help their kids feel more connected to American life, and to sort of blend in with American culture. It was, they were still Bengali. They were still practicing Buddhism. They weren't Christian. So the Christmas tree was just, a decoration. Anyway, so we see life through Gogol's eyes, and he's an American kid. And although he adheres to, because he has no choice, adheres to Bengali customs when he was a little boy in his home on Pemberton Road, which is the street where they lived, he felt separate. He felt disconnected from his American friends, whose names were Josh and Stephen, regular American names. And here he was Gogol Ganguli, and felt a very strong, distinct separation between himself and his friends and his Americanism. And as he became an older teenager, began to lie to his parents about what he was doing with his time, and what the disparity or the disconnect between their expectations and what made him feel comfortable, what made him feel connected to his friends and American culture. And when he graduated high school, he wanted to be an architect, and was going to school. He wanted to go to NYU, which was pretty far away from Boston, and stay on the East Coast, the same time zone, but he didn't want to stay close to his parents. He needed to sort of break away from their strict adherence to Bengali culture. And so as he was going to NYU, he decided to change his name legally from Gogol Ganguli to Nikhil Ganguli, so he could be called Nick or Nikhil, which he felt was a little more Americanized than Gogol, and still has a connection to Nikolai Gogol, who was his namesake, the namesake. So we see Gogol, or Nikhil, discovering who he is through college and the women he dates. And so he dates American girls, he dates white girls, he doesn't really date Bengalis. He doesn't allow his parents to fix him up with anybody, and so he's has a pretty serious high school girlfriend, and then she moves away, and I'm not high school, college girlfriend, sorry, and then she moves away, and that relationship ends, and he's a bit heartbroken, and then he meets Maxine when after graduate school, and he's working as an architect. He meets Maxine, and she's bohemian and very very sweet, but she just is extremely independent. She had been engaged to somebody who kind of ditched her right before they got married, and she moved back home with her parents, and they have an apartment, like a big brownstone in Chelsea, and his parents love him, but they have this sort of bohemian, rich, privileged lifestyle that in some ways is extremely attractive to him, and in other ways he finds kind of off-putting and doesn't know really what to do with that. But he's really in love with Maxine and in love with the kind of life he could live, but he separates himself emotionally from his parents, and his dad is doing a research grant, doing a research for a year in Ohio, and his mom is home in Massachusetts by herself, and his sister Sonia, his younger sister Sonia, is living in California, and the family is very fractured and broken apart. And Nikhil hardly ever goes home to visit his family. He doesn't want to introduce them to Maxine because he doesn't think that they're going to like her, that she's so different and so alien to everything that they know, and the customs of her and her family just are polar opposites to the Bengali customs that Ashok and Ashima raised him in. So that first meeting doesn't really go so well. I mean, Ashok and Ashima couldn't have been nicer. But the only person who was extremely uncomfortable in the situation was Gogol / Nikhil. He didn't know what to do with that. And it isn't really until there's a tragedy in the family that Gogol figures out that his life with Maxine is not going to work, and that as much as he's tried to pull away from Bengali culture, the only way he's really going to be happy is if he embraces it. And so he tries to divorce himself from everything that he was raised within, because he thought that was the way he was going to be happy, because it was making him fit in. But it wasn't a sense of belonging. I talk about this a lot in my memoir. This isn't really a sense of belonging. He belongs in the extended family of his Bengali world, as well as the American world, like his job as an architect and so on. But it doesn't make him happy. It doesn't give him a sense of belonging or a sense of really being embraced by Maxine and her family, because his Bengali nature is hidden, and all the customs and things that he was raised to feel important about, that were important to his family and their extended families, wasn't important to them, wasn't really even acknowledged by them. So after the tragedy, which I'm not telling you because spoiler alert, he decides that the thing with Maxine has to be over. And after some time alone and having an affair, yada, 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 he decides that he wants his mother to fix him up with somebody. And so there's a very close family friends who have a daughter named Moshami, who was childhood friends, acquaintances through this Bengali circle in the Boston area. Moshami and her family were very close with them, and had moved to Pennsylvania or something in their teens, so they drifted apart. But Moshami was living in the city, in New York City, where Gogol was living, and so they went out. And initially, I think they both were doing it in some respects to please their mothers, but they both they got along. and they seemed to want the same things and have the same goals, or reasonably close connected goals. And so after a few months of dating, they got very serious and they got married. And their parents were thrilled. They let their mothers plan the wedding, and they had very little to do with the details of the wedding. And Moshimi wound up cheating on him with a man from her own past, and Gogol ended the marriage when he found out. And it was heartbreaking to feel him get hurt like that. And then he evolved and matured and grew into an adult understanding of who his father was and who his mother was and what they gave up in order to give him a better life and his sister a better life, and to have more opportunities for the whole family moving to America, and the connections with their own family that they gave up moving from Calcutta. It's just a beautiful story that kind of wends its way quite naturally through their lives. It's not cookie cutter, it's not predictable, it's not formulaic in any way. Trying to find the passage that I want to read to you just a little bit, and I don't want it to give away too much of the plot, what I was originally going to read. Here, let's go to the spot where Ashok and Ashima meet. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's not very exciting watching me do this, but here. 8,000 miles away. Here. Okay. Okay, this is when Ashima was being fixed up with a bunch of other men. It had been after tutoring one day that Ashima's mother had met her at the door, told her to go straight to the bedroom and prepare herself. A man was waiting to see her. He was the third in as many months. The first had been a widower with 4 children, the second a newspaper cartoonist who knew her father and had been hit by a bus in Esplanade and lost his left arm. To her great relief, they both had rejected her. She was 19, in the middle of her studies, in no rush to be a bride, and so, obediently but without expectation, she untangled and rebraided her hair, wiped away the kohl that had smudged below her eyes, patted some cuticora powder from a velvet puff onto her skin. The sheer parrot green sari she pleated and tucked into her petticoat had been laid out for her on the bed by her mother. Before entering the room, Ashima had paused in the corridor. She could hear her mother saying, "She is fond of cooking, and she can knit extremely well. Within a week she finished this cardigan I am wearing." Ashima smiled, amused by her mother's salesmanship. It had taken her a better part of a year to finish the cardigan, and still her mother had to do the sleeves. Glancing at the floor, where visitors customarily removed their slippers, she noticed beside 2 sets of chapeaux a pair of men's shoes that were not like any she'd ever seen on the streets and trams and buses of Calcutta, or even in the windows of Bata. They were brown shoes with black heels and off-white laces and stitching. There was a band of lentil-sized holes embossed on either side of each shoe, and at the tips was a pretty pattern pricked into the leather as if with a needle. Looking more closely, she saw the shoemaker's name written in the insides, in gold lettering that had all but faded. Something and Sons, it said. She saw the size, 8.5, and the initials USA. And as her mother continued to sing her praises, Ashima, unable to resist a sudden and overwhelming urge, stepped into the shoes at her feet. Lingering sweat from the owner's feet mingled with hers, causing her heart to race. It was the closest thing she had ever experienced to the touch of a man. The leather was creased, heavy, and still warm. On the left shoe she noticed that one of the crisscrossing laces had missed a hole, and this oversight set her at ease. She extracted her feet, entered the room. The man was sitting in a rattan chair, his parents perched on the edge of the twin bed where her brother slept at night. He was slightly plump, scholarly-looking, but still youthful, with black thick-frame glasses and a sharp, prominent nose. A neatly trimmed mustache, connected to a beard that covered only his chin, lent him an elegant, vaguely aristocratic air. He wore brown socks and brown trousers, and a green and white striped shirt, and staring glumly at his knees. He did not look up when she appeared, though she was aware of his gaze as she crossed the room. By the time she managed to steal another look at him, he was again indifferent, focused on his knees. He cleared his throat as if to speak, but then said nothing. Instead, it was her father who did the talking, saying that the man had gone to St. Xavier's and then B.E. College, graduating first from both institutions. Ashima took her seat and smoothed the pleats of her sari. She sensed her mother eyeing her with approval. Ashima was 5 feet 4 inches, tall for a Bengali woman, 99 pounds. Her complexion was on the dark side of fair, but she had been compared on more than one occasion to the actress Madhabi Mukherjee. Her nails were admirably long, her fingers, like her father's, artistically slim. They inquired after her studies, and she was asked to recite a few stanzas from the Daffodils. The man's family lived in Alipur. The father was a labor officer in the customs department of the shipping company. My son has been living abroad for 2 years, the man's father said, earning a Ph.D. in Boston, researching in the field of fiber optics. Ashima had never heard of Boston or of fiber optics. She asked whether she was willing to fly on an airplane, and then if she was capable of living in a city characterized by severe snowy winters, alone. "Won't he be there?" she asked, pointing to the man whose shoes she'd briefly occupied, but who had yet to say a word to her. It was only after the betrothal that she learned his name. I can't even imagine that. Imagine marrying somebody or agreeing to marry somebody and not even knowing his first name. That's amazing, the amount of trust she places in her parents, the amount of societal expectation that she was living through. 1 week later, the invitations were printed, and 2 weeks after that, she was adorned and adjusted by countless aunts, countless cousins hovering around her. These were her last moments as Ashima Baduri before becoming Ashima Ganguli. Her lips were darkened, her brow and cheeks dotted with sandalwood paste, her hair wound up, bound with flowers, held in place by 100 wire pins that would take an hour to remove once the wedding was finally over. Her head was draped with scarlet netting. The air was damp, and in spite of the pins in Ashima's hair, thickest of all the cousins, it would not lie flat. She wore all the necklaces and chokers and bracelets that were destined to live most of their lives in an extra-large safety deposit box in the bank vault in New England. And at the designated hour, she was seated on a piri that her father had decorated, hoisted 5 feet off the ground, carried out to meet the groom. She had hidden her face with a heart-shaped betel leaf, kept her head bent low until she had circled him 7 times. It's a beautiful story. A handful of years ago, they did a movie adaptation of this. They cut out some things because they had to make it of regular feature film length, but they did a really good job. Enough where my students every year want to watch it when we read the novel, but not close enough where they can get away with not reading it and still passing the quizzes and tests and the writing assignment. So, it's based on, it's not the actual story. Hey, Carrie's here. Yay, I'm not talking to myself. Hi, Carrie. How are you? So good to see you. Or at least the little icon that is you. Anyway, so that's the book, The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. This also won the Pulitzer, just like her short story collection, Interpreter of Maladies. She's a phenomenal writer. And there's a little thing that she does when she's writing a sentence that changed the cadence and the rhythm for me. Like she wrote a sentence, let's say, I'm just going to make it off the top of my head. The train conductor checked all of the passengers' tickets and seats, we would say, I guess, in America. How Hi, Carrie's been here for about since about 12 minutes in. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for showing up. So the train conductor checked the tickets, the seats, and the passengers. But instead of putting that and in, Jhumpa Lahiri just has the string of adjectives. So the train conductor checked the tickets, the streets, the tickets, the seats, no, tickets. Wow. The train conductor checked the tickets, the seats, the passengers. And whenever there's a succession or a list of nouns like that in series, she always eliminates the and. And when I first started reading her prose, I have to say it bugged me. But I got used to it, and it seems more beautiful to me now in some way. It seems more relaxed to me in some way. And it's the same kind of pattern she follows consistently throughout the novel. And the use of metaphor and the cyclical nature of the story in unexpected ways is really quite beautiful. Anyway, so I strongly recommend it. New York Times bestseller, Pulitzer Prize winning story, beautiful prose, really unforgettable, multi-generational family story of immigrants to United States, and the marriage of cultures, which I find really fabulous. Anyway, so that's it for Book Talk Sunday. Thank you for joining me, my one guest, Carrie, and the rest of you who will watch it when it's recorded and posted on Facebook and on my YouTube channel, What's Up Marci. So I'll see you soon. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone. I appreciate you being here very much. Bye.